In this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to be showing you the Pyromancer build. This is a level 50 Sorcerer Sorceress build that's aimed at World Tier 3, doing Helltides, Nightmare Dungeons, etc. This Meteor build is not a highly survivable build, although you have heals and regen to help make it through tougher spots. The highlight of this build is its incredible burst DPS achieved by maximizing the use of all fire skills and further boosting it with gear and the Paragon system. You'll have 2 Hydra summons at your disposal while also enjoying frequent flame shields and an ultimate every 45 seconds or less that lets you chain cast triple meteors, essentially melting most elites and even dungeon bosses. Your main gameplay rotation will be to summon your Hydras to start an encounter, then position yourself wisely so enemies can be rounded up. You'll cast Meteor or Fireball and kill some small enemies quickly. If there are elites in a group, you'll use Inferno to tie them together, and thanks to the passive Supreme Inferno, you now have 8 seconds to summon as many meteors as you can spam. You have passive stacking bonuses such as more damage to burning or immobilized enemies from your meteor, so fighting against large groups is your specialty with this build. This build's incredible DPS is further boosted by the smart use of enchantments. We double dip Fireball to also obtain its enchantment effect that makes all enemies explode in a fireball for 50% of its damage. To double down on our AoE capabilities, we'll assign Firewall as the second enchantment, giving our burning damage a 5% chance to spawn 2 firewalls under the enemy group. I tried to make the Meteor enchantment work, but you need to have really high lucky hit to make it perform as well. The key synergies that make a difference to your survivability and rotation come from passives. Elemental Attunement, for example, gives you a 15% chance to reset your Flame Shield, which is invaluable in battle as it will deal damage while also healing you. Being able to stand in place with Flame Shield can be very convenient when doing the Meteor combo. Align the Elements will give you up to 40% less damage from elites, which is very helpful when dealing with Helltides and Nightmare Dungeons, as elites are everywhere in these areas. Mana Shield provides you with a 15% damage reduction every 100 mana you spend, so essentially every third fireball you cast, you'll get 5 seconds of taking less damage. Protection makes it so using a cooldown grants you 20% of your life as a barrier, so your Flame Shield and Inferno give you an extra shield. Inner Flames makes it so you deal extra 9% damage when healthy, which is over 80% health, and this is why your shields are important, to make sure your health is topped off, so you can gain extra damage from passives like this. Devouring Blaze makes it so that you have a 30% increased critical against burning enemies up to 75% if they are immobilized, which your Meteor does. If you want to tinker with Immobilize a bit more, you can move a point from something you feel is underperforming for you into the Crippling Flames passive that gives you a lucky hit chance to immobilize enemies for 2 seconds. Fiery Surge increases your mana regeneration by 30% from killing burning enemies, so basically every enemy we fight. Endless Pyre makes it so you deal up to 15% more burning damage to enemies based on the time they've been burning. This can be quite impactful on bosses in particular, since they tend to be burning for a long period of time. Warmth makes so you heal per second based on the amount of enemies burning around you. This is meant to help you stay topped up as you take on big groups of enemies. Your damage is boosted by things dying and exploding into a fireball. Soulfire gives you a 10% mana cost reduction from standing still for 1.5 seconds, letting you cast more of those wonderful meteors as you pop your shields. And lastly, Isu's Fury increases fire critical strike by up to 30% based on enemy health and critical kills. The interconnection of these passives in the gear we've selected gives you incredible DPS, which will make going through dungeons and Helltides a fast and fun affair. Equipment is a critical part of any level 50 plus build, as this is where the actual itemization begins to take shape in the game. This is not an easy build to level up with, as it needs specific bonuses, and some of them are unlikely to drop until later in the game, such as the Meteor boosts. It's also common to get gear with different skills, such as Frost and Shock, so you should really be farming equipment when you put this build together. For this particular Sorcerer build, we'll be looking to get gear with specific bonuses to our main damage dealing skills, but we also want to focus on boosting Pyromancy skill damage, burning and fire damage, all damage, and attack speed. You should also look to increase your stats with stat bonuses on gear for willpower, which gives you regen and overpower, intelligence for skill damage and elemental resistance, as well as dexterity for critical strike chance. Make sure you get plus Fireball, plus Flame Shield, plus Meteor, and plus Hydra on your gear if you can, in addition to rare and plus passive nodes. I use the plus skill gear to distribute my points evenly and achieve better survivability, but you will either be a lot squishier or do a lot less damage if you happen to opt one way or the other. I have kept damage type resistances, poison, shadow, etc. buffs on armor, as it can be troublesome to deal with elemental packs. With this setup out of our combat, we have 45% damage resistances against all types, and we can increase those when using our in-combat skills and obtaining additional buffs and elixirs. Jewelry bonuses we benefit from are +1 rank to all mastery skills, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, and lucky hit chance. You can also find Pyromancy skill damage and damage to burning enemies to further boost your base DPS. You can also use cooldown reduction, as it will impact how often you hit Inferno. If you're extremely lucky, you'll find the unique Staff of Endless Rage, which makes it so that every third cast of Fireball, 2 extra Fireballs will come down, which is a huge boost in damage to say the least. Unfortunately, you won't see footage of it here as I'd already spec'd out into a Frost Sorceress build by this time, and I simply did not have the time to go back and put the Fire one back together again. Another unique to consider is the Gloves of Illuminator, which has attack speed, Fireball ranks, and bonus. Fireball now bounces as it travels, exploding each time it hits the ground, but its explosions deal 75 to 65% less damage. If you get a good roll, you can create some crazy Fireball effects. Moving along to the aspects that we use for this build, let's take a look at the first one here, which is Serpentine Aspect. This makes it so that you can have an additional Hydra active, though the duration is reduced by a little bit. Aspect of Shattered Stars makes meteorites fall around Meteor, dealing fire damage, and it makes your meteorites additionally burn enemies they hit for damage over time. Aspect of Intercom makes it so you deal increased damage for each second you stand still. You tend to do this a lot with this build while you're holding down Meteor or Fireball. Aspect of the 3 Curses increases Meteor's critical strike damage against healthy targets. Protecting Aspect makes it so that when you get hit when you're below 80% health, a magic bubble is summoned around you, making you immune for 3 to 5 seconds, which makes you immune from CCs and damage. Aspect of the Protector gives you a damage shield for 10 seconds when you damage an elite once every 30 seconds. And lastly, Mother's Embrace Unique Ring makes it so that when you hit at least 5 enemies with one of your core skills, you'll refund a percentage of the cost, making it so that you can cast more easily and often. Make sure that you always upgrade your equipment that you tend to be using for a while, ones that have good bonuses, as this will increase the bonuses that they give, which is very nice. Make sure to do this at the blacksmith or jeweler, whichever applies. And make sure that you go to the occultist and enchant the items that you really like. If they have like a bonus, for instance, maybe you have like a frost damage bonus on there, and you want to change that out and maybe get fire damage instead, make sure you go to the occultist and do that at least once. The first one is rather inexpensive, but it gets crazy expensive after that. So trying at least once is probably good at this point of the game, but not more than that. Gems are also important for this build. I do rubies for armor for max life, diamonds on jewelry for elemental resistances, and amethyst or topaz on the weapon. Amethyst give you damage over time, and topaz gives you basic skill damage. As you level Paragon, you'll put points into willpower and intelligence, but you'll want to take the Tactician Glyph in your slot as it's the most balanced for DPS and resistances. You'll need to assign 25 points of dexterity around it, but once you do this, you'll get a very nice boost to the rare nodes higher on your tree that boost your non-physical damage by 16%, so all your damage. Additionally, this glyph gives you 10% increased damage for 4 seconds after casting a defensive skill, so you'll be able to maximize the use of your Flame Shield. The default radius will also catch the other rare node you got, so you'll get plus 16 intelligence and 6.5 resistances to all elements, which is nice. Another good node to use if you're looking to simply up your damage is Flame Feeder, that gives you plus 16% damage to burning targets and plus 10% increased direct damage to burning enemies, so any enemy you're attacking essentially. Lastly, if you're struggling with mana consumption, there's a glyph called Unleash that increases your damage and mana regeneration for 3 seconds every 50 mana you spend, so roughly every 1 fireball. It can be useful, but the DPS boost is not as significant as other glyphs. So that wraps up our Pyromancer build. We still have more Sorcerer builds coming. We have the Permafrost build just around the corner as well, and we are working on other class builds as well. If you have questions about this one, leave them in the comments below, and we will get back to you on it. What do you guys think of the game so far? Are you guys enjoying it? Let me know in the comments below.